Hello, Space Unicorns! Welcome to the Uncanny Magazine Podcast, episode 71A. I am Michael Damian Thomas, the publisher and editor-in-chief of Uncanny Magazine. Oh, Space Unicorns, it is hot out there. Right now, it's been heat advisories here in central Illinois, which is better than our record-setting year of tornadoes. But been a lot of indoors, but which is probably though necessary for me anyway. Because oh boy, have I got a lot on my plate. So many things going on, Space Unicorns. Some of which you are about to find out about. Yes, July 13th, Space Unicorns. A thing will happen. What will happen? Well, it's July. So yes, the Uncanny Magazine Year 13 Kickstarter, The Space Unicorn Believes in You, will launch. And, so there's a link floating around there, and you can probably, get on the bandwagon right now, or just wait till Monday. But yes, Space Unicorns, we are going to try for another year of Uncanny Magazine in the podcast because, I think everyone needs Uncanny. Uncanny is wonderful, I hope you're enjoying it. But yes, and with this year 13, it is also going to be this spectacular issue 75, the Diamond issue. So yes, it's a milestone issue, so there is going to be something cool for it, which is very specifically all of the fiction writers, and two of the essayists are all writers who have previously won an award with a piece that they wrote for Uncanny Magazine. How awesome is that? They're all coming back. So this is going to be a very wonderful issue, and there's just so many things planned for year 13. You just stick around, Space Unicorns, and be a part of it one more time. And now, the news. Tremendous news, Space Unicorns. Uncanny Magazine is thrilled to announce that managing editor Monty Lin will also be the new Uncanny Magazine nonfiction editor. He will continue to be the managing editor in addition to being nonfiction editor. So this is just more things for Monty to do. Monty has been with Uncanny Magazine since September 2021 when he became the assistant editor. He's been the managing editor since May 2022 and has won 2 Hugo Awards in that position. Monty is going to bring amazing amounts of thoughtfulness, organization, experience, and vision to the nonfiction editing. I'm certain Monty will continue Uncanny's tradition of publishing provocative, thoughtful, and passionate essays. I can't wait to see what he's going to do. Spectacular news, Space Unicorns! 6 People to Revise You by J.R. Dawson and The Shadow on the Nest by Elia John Johnson are Theodore A. Sturgeon Memorial Award finalists. And that's not all. His Love's Ashes on His Tongue by Uncanny Magazine managing editor, soon-to-be nonfiction editor Monty Lin, published in The Deadlands, is also a Sturgeon Memorial Award finalist. So congratulations to JR, Elia, Monty, and to all of the finalists. More award news, Space Unicorns. So in fabulous news fashion, When He Calls Your Name by Catherine M. Valente is a finalist for the 2026 Eugene Foster Memorial Award for Short Fiction. Congratulations to Cat and to all of the finalists. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Get ready for LACon 5, the 84th World Science Fiction Convention. Join fans, writers, and creators from around the galaxy for 5 days of panels, cosplay, and unforgettable fandom at the Anaheim Convention Center, August 27th to 31st, 2026. See you in the future.
And welcome back, Space Unicorns. This episode of the Uncanny Magazine podcast features the short story Leavetaking by Tia Tashiro, the poem Instructions for Becoming Fire by Chisomaga Umenyi, and finally, I will interview Tia Tashiro. Tia Tashiro has been published in Uncanny a couple of times now, and probably many have been seeing her work just burst all over the magazine scene. Tia is just amazing, just an amazing writer. Just the stories are filled with such brilliant ideas and such emotional poignancy, and Leavetaking is just... it is so wonderful. It's heart-wrenching. The characterizations are just deep and rich and wonderful. And just, it is one of those stories that is both frustrating and heartbreaking and a little frightening and just a phenomenal story. I'm just can't wait for all of you to hear it, Space Unicorns. And now our story, Leavetaking by Tia Tashiro, as read by Erika Ensign.
She and her cousin Bo didn't hate each other. Far from it. They'd grown up together. Same small farming town in the inland northwest. Population 394. So small that when Bo finished high school, he and his classmates each got a lamppost of their own on the town's single main road to feature their senior pictures. Kate and Bo had gone out on the overgrown baseball field to snap his pic. She'd posed him up against the chain-link fence by the dugouts, one thumb tucked in his jeans pocket, one leg bent as he leaned against the fencing. The planes of his face caught the sunlight. Chain-link shadows dappled his shoulders. She'd been proud of the composition. She flipped her old digital camera around to show him. "Cool angle, right?" Bo gave an appreciative whistle, ruffling his hair with his free hand. She caught a whiff of the scented hair gel he'd nicked from his dad's bathroom shelf for the occasion. "Shoot, that's great," he'd said. "Too bad I won't be able to return the favor." "I don't know," she said, lowering the camera away from Bo. She scuffed her beat-up sneaker against home base. "Maybe you'll get a chance if you visit. Lots can happen in 2 years." "You couldn't get me back here for $1 billion. Bo caught her eye, and her disappointment. "Except maybe for your graduation." He pushed off the fence in one smooth motion, continuous. He had the sort of easy physicality of a pro athlete. It had served him well on the soccer field, back when he'd played. "But hey, Katie Cat, look at me. You'll get out of here too. Promise me." He tapped her camera with one calloused finger. "You've got a gift. Don't let it dry up. Get out there and use it." He'd always been like that. The confidence, the ambition, the tough love you'll be glad I made you do it attitude. Bo took nothing and crafted something out of it, like when they were kids and he'd made her a doll out of grass and dandelion stems. That day, when she took his senior picture, he'd just begged his way into an older friend's spare room in Seattle and meant to try his hand at city living. He'd sworn he wouldn't become his father, who'd left for New York only to end up right back where he started. And Bo was always right. Or nearly always. Because he ended up back in town a little less than a year later. No $1 billion involved. Broke, and with a criminal record for petty theft. And a little less than a year after that, he was in a hospital bed in Spokane, and Kate was perched on an uncomfortable chair by his feet, anxiously watching his vitals fluctuate. He woke up. He cursed her. He died. Kate towed the line of the speed limit as she rode, feeling the shudder rumble of her motorbike growling beneath her. The landscape was scrub brush and scattered trees, a wide expanse of unbroken South Dakota. She'd gone to the library before she'd left Sturgis, logged into her forum accounts while the ache in her feet crept up to a burn, and found a message awaiting her. An address. It was a small town in Dane County, Wisconsin. She'd be there in 11 hours. 10 if she pushed it. She pushed it. As the miles ticked past, she allowed herself to hope. She'd once thought hope was delicate, easily crushed. She'd found since that it was a more resilient thing. For each hope she'd felt crunched down like a bug under a boot, another had risen, fresh and new. Kate's hope was on the horizon. On Dog Lover Vi, the username that belonged, if she was lucky, to another sorry soul who'd been cursed. Kate was always, 1, tired. She was homeless in the deepest sense. The more roots she put down, the quicker the curse spread. The longest she'd stayed in one place since Bo died was 2 weeks. She read once on a library computer about something called the first night effect. That on the first night in a new place, the human brain sleeps like a dolphin, one hemisphere dormant at a time. Maybe that was why she was always exhausted, why the bags under her eyes only ever deepened. 2, broke. She was a promising student in high school, youngest of 5 siblings by 5 years, a surprise baby used to her parents letting her do what she wanted if she kept her grades up. She'd been on track to graduate with honors until Bo's curse, 2 months before graduation. No high school diploma and no stability meant no money. 3, angry. At Bo, mostly, which was hard because he was dead, gone where her anger couldn't follow. She was angry at him for cursing her. Angry for how he'd done it. Angrier still that he'd had the audacity to leave her to deal with the aftermath of his choice. That he'd left her alone. When Kate got to a new town, the first place she went was the library. She had a soft spot for librarians, with their carts and organization systems and ubiquitous cardigans. Kate wore the same glasses she'd gotten in high school. With bright blue frames she went through phases of liking, and librarians always complimented them. She usually started by finding the least harried librarian and asking gently probing questions about the supernatural, about the occult, about curses. Typically, she said she was doing research for a school project. Early on, the librarians had assumed high school. These days, college. Kate had read everything from new releases in shiny hardcovers to thick old tomes taped into usability to books written by locals and kept on special shelves. She'd learned more about crystallography, tarot, and auras than she cared to know, and could recite a few of the better ghost stories off the cuff, but she drew a blank when it came to her curse, the bona fide kind. Kate called her curse a chafe. At the outset, it always felt like she'd gotten a mild rug burn on the bottom of her feet. Uncomfortable, but manageable. When she pulled off her socks, the effects of the curse looked at first glance like bruising, blue and purple splotches spreading across her soles. If she looked closer, though, the colors would shift and merge like goo in a lava lamp, an uncanny dance against the topography of her skin. The curse would start to climb within a day or two, ebbing and flowing up her calves, stretching its blotchy fingers across her kneecaps and thighs. She'd tried over-the-counter meds, shoplifted rash medications, and antihistamines, downed 4 shots of a stranger's tequila in an experimental bid for numbness. Nothing helped. Nothing stopped the ceaseless upward creep. By the time the curse reached her stomach, the discomfort in her feet was usually enough to motivate moving on. She'd once let it get as high as the underside of her ribs, turning her whole lower body into a shifting morass of colors and pain before giving in. Once, in Wisconsin, a hawk-eyed waitress at a diner had noticed. She carried a no-nonsense air, middle-aged, fast-talking, candid. "Things all right at home, honey?" she'd asked Kate bluntly, gesturing with her pen under the table. Kate had reached down to tug her pants leg further over her ankle. "Yeah, thanks," she said with a half-smile. "Just a bruise from the road." Beau had always called her a terrible liar. Even 5 years after his death, she could hear the admonishment in his voice. "Should have told her you got it wrestling tigers in the circus," he might say, "if you're wasting your breath on a lie with shit delivery." The waitress had raised both eyebrows impressively high, communicating in no uncertain terms that both she and Kate knew Kate was full of shit. Then she'd taken Kate's order, and Kate had scarfed down half the plate before skipping out on her tab when no one was looking. Kate knew of 3 other people who'd been cursed. The first she'd found via one of her forum accounts. It had been 2 years in. She'd long since moved past denial about what Beau had done to her. She was staunchly rooted in anger, with a taste of bargaining on the side. She holed up in her sister Lauren's spare room in West Kansas for 4 days, long enough for the curse to make its undeniable mark, and took a picture of the result. Even in the still image, the colors on her legs shifted and spun. She uploaded the photo on a few sites with the caption, "If this looks familiar, message me." 3 months later, when she'd long since resigned herself to the post being a wash, after weeks of weeding out randos and weirdos who popped up in her messages like dandelions, she heard from another user. He sent a picture of his own. She almost deleted it, thinking of the other unsolicited pics she'd received before it loaded. He'd taken a photo of his hands. His skin was darker than hers, but she could still see it looked mottled, bruised, and the colors shifted as she stared. A familiar pattern. She'd met him in Durham, North Carolina, at a Mediterranean grill and grocery. His name was Samuel. He was mid-30s, by her guess, and drove a nice car. He bought her a lambiero heavy on the tzatziki, and they ate outside, at a black picnic table. "Thought I was the only one," he said, scooping up a glob of hummus with pita. He lifted his free hand and splayed it, showing her the markings. "I've mostly gotten used to it." "Mine looks like yours," she said. She hadn't been in Durham long enough for the chafe to start, but she could feel the promise of it weighing heavy, like the charge in the air before a storm. "It gets worse the longer I stay in one place." He raised an eyebrow. "How'd that happen?" So she told him. About Beau and the hospital bed, about vanilla pudding and last words and curses. By the time she finished, he'd set down his food and was looking at her with an intensity that reminded her of Bo. "Huh," he said. "Well, doesn't that beat all?" "Is it different from how it happened for you?" He shook his head. "No, just didn't expect it to be so familiar. Mine was my mama when she died. A bad cancer." He made a strange face, somewhere between a grimace and a rueful smile. "She was dying, and she knew it. I was right there next to her. It was the middle of the night, and I was the only one up. She put her hand on top of mine and stared right into my eyes. I could just see how much she loved me, you know?" "It was like that with my cousin." "Yeah, thought so. Anyway, that's when my mama told me, and she said this like she believed it. 'You'll be with a nice girl, someone who will give you children.' And then she died." Kate's brow furrowed. "And that was it?" Samuel shook his head. "You don't get it. I didn't date. I don't like women. And I don't want kids. She knew all that and couldn't accept it. It was a hard way to lose her on those last words." Kate winced. "I'm sorry." "My curse always starts here," he said, lifting his hands again. "It's slow, but it builds the longer I go between dates. Just keeping some profiles running on online dating sites gives me a little relief. I feel bad about leaning on the women, but I try to be respectfully boring, and I always get the check when they let me." He studied his hands again. "I know it would probably go away if I actually got married or had a kid, but I just can't make myself do it. Anyways, I keep worrying it's going to get worse as I age," he added. "But so far," he shrugged. "How long is so far?" 11 years. Kate's heart thudded in her chest. There went her hopes that Bo's curse would lose its teeth over time. "But it's not so bad," Samuel said. "I mean, not like yours. Sounds like hell staying on the road like you do. Always leaving." "It is," she thought, and instead of saying it, shoved a too big last bite of her gyro in her mouth and chewed. It helped to meet Samuel, but she'd somehow hoped that this would be the end, that instead of giving her a hot meal and camaraderie, he'd have solved his curse and taught her how to break her own. Before she knew what he was doing, he had his wallet out. He pulled a few bills from it and held them out to her. "Oh, no," she said, lifting her hands. "I couldn't." She was still too proud then. "Look," he said, "you're worse off than I am. Take it." He pulled out a business card and scribbled on the back. "And here's my personal number. You call me if you need anything. And if you find anything, okay?" She hesitated, then gave in. She folded the bills around the business card and tucked the wad in her pocket. "I will. And you'll call me?" "Count on it. We're birds of a feather, and of a very select flock." She'd been through Durham a few times since then, and taken Samuel up on an offer for a spare bed to crash on. On one of those occasions, she'd noticed his curse getting particularly bad. It had crept all the way up under his sleeves. "Sometimes I wonder if I should just give in," he admitted to her, right before she left town. He was facing Kate in his driveway, looking past her and her bike down his nice street in a nice neighborhood, and seemed not to see them at all. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Kate and Bo liked hitting each other with sticks as kids. This shouldn't have engendered amity, but nevertheless did. They were close enough in age that their moms, sisters, born and raised in the same town they'd probably die in, often shoved them together at family gatherings to entertain themselves. Kate's older siblings were preoccupied with their personal lives and dramas. Bo's older brother had died of a burst appendix when Bo was 4, and his parents had promptly funneled their attention from their remaining child into the fathomless well of grief. So Kate and Bo, left to their own devices, would find good long sticks outside and pretend they were swords. They were fencers, or samurai, or knights as the mood took them. They yelled, "On guard!" They whacked at each other with intensity. Neither one of them was a crybaby, and any earned bruises went hidden and unremarked upon by the family. That was back in the time when they were young and didn't yet know there was more to want. They walked past grain silos and green fields, drove 30 minutes for soccer games, and spent hours playing pretend in Kate's living room, building forts out of sofa cushions until someone made them stop. Samuel was the first person Kate had discovered with a curse. The second was a man up in Vancouver who'd posted a picture of his temples. where the distinctive shimmering curse bruise followed the curve of his hairline. This was a mere 6 months after Samuel. The Canadian man didn't give her his real name, just called himself AJ. His messages were short, paranoid. He kept asking if she was real. He wouldn't message her details about his curse, but told her he'd talk if she came up to meet him. Kate tried to explain that she couldn't, that she didn't have the time, documents, or permanent address she'd need to apply for a passport, much less the money for processing fees. Halfway through the message, AJ blocked her. Kate motored east, body against bike, bike against road. She hadn't put much thought into home before the curse. She'd known most of the kids in her graduating class, like Beau, wanted out however they could manage it. They talked about town like it was fingers locked around a throat, choking. Kate was not a confrontational classmate. She didn't pipe up to say that she loved the way the wheat fields swayed in a brisk breeze, like an ocean or a Van Gogh painting. She didn't defend the way the willows by the creek caught the sunlight and filtered it in a glorious green curtain. She didn't point out that the rust on the roof of the old shack by the train tracks swirled a beautiful pattern across the corrugated metal. When she wasn't out with Beau or doing homework, she traipsed around town with her camera. It was how she found these things and others, these snapshots of beauty. They were private. Hers. You didn't notice most marvels until you had a camera in your hands. And besides, it wasn't like bringing up any of this would change anyone's mind. Not Beau's, not her classmates. She didn't want to be weird. She kept her mouth shut. The sun was at her back now. She chased her shadow east. The dividing lines on the road ticked past, a blur of yellow. Only a few more hours before she'd meet dog lover Vi, who claimed to know how curses worked, who might know how to break them. So Kate rode and let the sound of the motor drown out her memories. Early on, when Kate hadn't yet understood her curse, she'd let her dad bring her to the doctor. The chafe had developed slowly then, taking a few days after Beau's death to get all the way up to her knees. She later attributed the speed to the fact that her family had still been traveling up and back from Spokane in the aftermath. The family was preoccupied with arrangements for Beau, but what Kate thought was inexplicable bruising had been alarming enough that her dad had driven her to the nearest emergency room, a couple of towns away. The cab of his truck smelled faintly of tobacco, the scent sending her back to when he'd take her on a long drive once a month, like he did with all her siblings, just to talk. One-on-one time held sacrosanct. Neither of them spoke on this drive. They sat quiet, worn out, listening to the engine rumble, to the thump rattle when they hit a pothole, to the country radio station crackling slowly into static as they got farther from home. By the time they arrived, Kate's bruising had faded to cover just her feet, the ache subsiding into little more than a mosquito bite itch. "Sorry, Dad," she'd said, pulling off her shoes and propping her legs on the dashboard. "I think it went away?" He looked at her skin, then through the windshield at the emergency room, its windows reflecting the daylight. His face was drawn, tired. "Better to notice out here," he said finally. "Less expensive." When they'd driven back, the curse had picked right up where it left off, but she hadn't told him for another day or two. She still felt the lingering sense that she shouldn't be a bother. She'd discovered the curse's limits quick. It hurt less when she was on her feet. Started to fade when she was moving. Disappeared when she left town, though the longer she fought it, the further the curse seemed to expand its effect. Early on, just walking past the train tracks bordering one end of town was enough to earn her a little relief. Soon, even taking her dad's old motorbike to the next town over didn't do much. She connected the dots at Beau's wake, her legs aching under a hand-me-down black dress one of her older sisters had worn to 3 family funerals in a row. 2 grandfathers, 1 great-uncle. She could hear Beau's voice, all at once, clear as day. "You won't stay, Katie. Not ever." She left town for good the next morning. She didn't know how to explain it to her parents, didn't even know how to try. And she hadn't slept well the night before, the curse wrapping her lower body in a bruising grip. She finally fell into a fitful slumber a few hours before dawn. When she woke, all she knew was that she had to leave, as primal a compulsion as the desire to eat. Astride her father's motorcycle, flying towards I-90, she'd finally felt the curse ebb away. The relief was so tangible she could taste it. She hadn't known what was in store, hadn't even suspected. That was 5 years ago. The third curse Kate heard of, and the second person she'd actually met, wasn't through an online forum at all. It had been less than a year ago. She'd spent a long day at a library in Arizona, shuffling through archived newspapers on a tip from a white-haired librarian. Kate had asked in a roundabout way about the curse bruising. The librarian had pursed her lips. "There was a story in the news about some sort of strange markings on a local woman," she said. "I remember because we were worried it was contamination at the time. You know, something in the water, like Los Alamos, but all the tests came back clean." Kate perked up. "Do you remember when?" The librarian shook her head. 20 years ago, maybe? 30? My memory's not what it was. You're welcome to dig through the records." She directed Kate to the papers and left her with a bright, "By the way, dear, I love your glasses." The article in question had been published 24 years ago, shortly after Kate was born. There was a picture of a woman's neck. Even in black and white, Kate thought, the markings were familiar. The woman was named Geraldine Hewitt. When Kate looked her up in Arizona's voter registration, not expecting anything, she showed up living just a mile down the road from the library. Geraldine's house was a single story, as squat as a toad and roughly the same color. There was a gray Toyota Corolla parked in the driveway, its bumper spotted with rust. A sign posted in the yard announced, "Trespass and die." Kate took her chances and mounted the porch steps. She knocked as politely as she could, ignoring both the "No Solicitors" sign below the doorbell and the "I mean it" addendum below that. She knocked again and was just about to give up the ghost for the day when she heard it through the thin wooden door. A distinctive sound, one she knew from years of growing up in a hunting family. A rifle being cocked. She still had a survival instinct, but it had been worn down on the road, and now it was beaten into reckless submission by her desperation. "Whoa, hey!" she called out. "I'm cursed and I think you are too!" Then she pushed herself up against the side of the porch, trying at the very least to get out of the line of fire. Nothing moved. The house seemed to breathe. After a lifetime, the door cracked open. An eye peered through, set in a wrinkled face. Kate thought she glimpsed a knitted turtleneck, though it was still the warm end of autumn. "Geraldine?" "Prove it." Thank God Kate had already been in town long enough for the curse to show. She reached down to her leg, moving slowly, and tugged up her pants to bare her ankle. Geraldine studied the evidence with a sharp eye. Her gaze flicked back up to Kate. "Explain." Kate did, as succinctly as she could, her curse in all its glory. When she was done, Geraldine shut the door. Kate's surprise was just transitioning to indignance when she heard the slide of a chain in a lock, and Geraldine opened it again. "Come in," she said, "and make it snappy." She sat Kate down on an old floral sofa and offered her a handful of prepackaged saltine crackers. Kate did not turn food down as a general rule. She munched as Geraldine spoke, trying to keep the crumbs contained. "It was my daughter," Geraldine said. "I won't beat around the bush. I blame her for it. I was a school teacher before I had my children, 2 boys and a girl, but my sons had sense in them. One's a doctor, one's a nurse. Good boys. They're still alive. She isn't." "I'm sorry for your loss," Geraldine sniffed. "She was sick most of her life. I told you I was a school teacher. I taught science, evolution. I never was one for organized religion. My late husband and my sons, they felt the same. But my Lucy, she found peace in the idea of a big G God. Don't know if it was her health that led her there, or the town she grew up in, but it certainly wasn't me. She got married to an evangelist. They had the ceremony in a big church, stained glass windows, the works." Geraldine paused to shove another handful of crackers at Kate. "All the doctors told her not to try for a baby. It'd kill her. She shouldn't have been able to get pregnant, but she did, and for Pete's sake, she decided to keep it. Said she had faith." The wrinkle lines around Geraldine's lips tightened. She smoothed her hands against her skirt, and for a breath or two, there was nothing but the sound of skin against cotton and the clock on the wall ticking away the afternoon. Then she knotted her hands in the fabric and straightened, shrugging off the moment like a shawl. "I watched my Lucy die with a grandbaby inside her," Geraldine said evenly. "And the last thing she said to me was something about church. 'You'll find God, Mama,' she told me. And she was looking right at me. eyes shining like they always did when she got preachy. I don't doubt she meant well. She had a kind heart, my Lucy. She loved me more'n anything. But that's when it started. Kate swallowed. I'm so sorry. Sorry's not worth the time it takes to say it, Geraldine said. I go to church now, every Sunday, and sometimes during the week, else this gets too bad. She tugged down her turtleneck just enough to show Kate the telltale sign of the curse, curling beneath her chin. I bring my knitting. Helps pass the time. I see. Kate crumpled her plastic cracker wrappers in a fist. Look, I'm trying to figure out how to beat mine somehow. You can't, Geraldine said, curt. It's a lost cause. But we have to try, don't we? It's been 2 decades, Geraldine said. I've made my peace. You haven't. That's why I let you in here, so I can tell you it's not worth fighting. If you're not going to listen, then get out. It was the first time her voice had quavered. Kate saw a flash of a deep sadness in her eyes, gone as quickly as it had appeared. Are you sure? Leave, Geraldine said, gaze hardening. Or I really will shoot you, put you out of your misery. Kate left. She was used to that. Kate had been on a rotation between her siblings' places, minus her eldest brother Danny, who considered her a no-good, do-nothing tramp, his words, and wouldn't let her couch surf, not even for a night. But she hadn't gone home since Bo died. If she even got close to eastern Washington, the chafe would start up again. A warning. Don't even think about it. Kate had considered telling her parents, her siblings, about the curse, but it sounded crazy, and she knew it sounded crazy. And when people thought you were crazy, they locked you up somewhere and didn't let you out. Kate didn't know what would happen if she couldn't get out, if she was forced to stay. She had nightmares about it, the bruise colors climbing her chest, her shoulders, her neck, until they choked her face. Aches and pains radiating out across her skin as she pounded against padded walls, begging disbelieving doctors to let her get back on the road. They'd never believed that leaving was what would save her. They'd keep her, until the curse crawled inside her, too, gnarling in her lungs, stopping her heart. They'd be baffled in the autopsy. She'd be unrecognizable. They'd have her funeral and call it a medical mystery, a hometown girl gone off the rails. The truth tucked side by side with Kate in her coffin. That's how the dreams always ended. Kate, unmoving at last, buried 3 plots down from Bo. So she dreamed of the curse killing her. Less frequently, more strangely, she dreamed of the moth. Half a dream, half a memory. Kate was 7. The moth had gotten in through a hole in the screen door, and now it battered against the flickering bulb above the kitchen sink. She dragged a chair over and, after a few aborted attempts, trapped the moth against a cupboard. She felt it fluttering helplessly against her hands, the soft touch of its panic. Carefully, she cupped it between her palms and trotted to the back door. When she told Bo what she'd done, he said, in the definitive way of one older and wiser, "It probably died, you know." "What?" "You can't touch moths," he said. "It hurts the scales on their wings or something." "But I just wanted to help." She felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "I wanted to save it." He looked almost guilty then, self-aware enough to realize he'd gone a little too far, that Kate was a little too young. "I know," he said, patting her awkwardly on the head. "I know you did." Kate met dog lover Vi in a neighborhood just outside of Oregon, Wisconsin. The door opened as soon as she threw her bike on its kickstand. A middle-aged woman exited, tall and smiling, 2 leashes looped around her wrist. She waved. "Hey there," she called. "I'm Violet. You must be Kate. Mind if we talk while we walk?" The dogs milling around her feet were dachshunds, canine sausages with russet coats that shimmered as they waddled about. Violet handed Kate a leash and turned down the driveway. Kate was grateful for the walk, her legs sore after a day on the road. They meandered for a while in silence. Violet had an easy gait, relaxed shoulders, and Kate noticed splotches of paint on her hands. "So," Violet said, "I got cursed. Any guesses how?" Kate thought of Samuel's mother, Geraldine's daughter. She thought about Bo. "Someone's last words," she said. Violet raised an eyebrow. Good. Very good. You've met more of us then. 2. Thought so. Hard to notice the trend otherwise. Violet tugged at one of the leashes. No, Ruffy, get out of there. The dogs were determined to enter the many culverts dispersed throughout the neighborhood, and Violet was equally determined not to let them. Have you met more of us? Violet nodded. A few. Spread across the world. I was quite desperate in the early years to break mine, and I had the resources to pursue that goal. She paused while one of the dogs sniffed at a bush. I couldn't do it. Break mine, I mean, until I understood how they worked. How do they work? Kate could see the puzzle pieces waiting to be put together, but she wasn't quite there yet. That was why she'd come, wasn't it? To get her answer? An answer in someone else's voice. An answer that meant she didn't have to go back to that last moment with Bo. Violet looked at her. Her eyes were dark, her expression solemn. I think you already know, she said. I think you might have known as soon as you were cursed. Kate swallowed. Violet said, Tell me. This was what had happened when Bo had placed the curse. Kate had been sitting on the end of his hospital bed. She'd been crying so much over the week prior that she felt as wrung out as a ratty old rag. He'd been touch and go in the first few days, but they said he was recovering well. Something wrong with his heart. Congenital. It was quiet in the room, though the nurses sometimes chattered as they walked past his open doorway. Bo's mom, Kate's aunt, had made a foray downstairs to the hospital cafeteria, not wanting to touch the dinner a nurse had brought him. A bowl of tomato soup, an egg salad sandwich, and small containers of fruit, apple juice, and vanilla pudding. Even laid up in bed, Bo kept pushing Kate to eat. Come on, Katie cat, he'd said, his voice weak. You know I won't be able to keep it all down. Have half the sandwich at least, or the pudding. If you eat a spoonful with some of the fruit, it's basically a salad. I don't think that's how it works. He reached towards his tray with a quivering hand, lifting the plastic knife. It took her a moment to realize he was brandishing at her. Then at least humor me, he said, a sparkle in his eye. On guard. He was trying to make her laugh, trying to lighten her mood, and he was the one in the hospital gown. She managed a half smile. That, she thought, was when something went wrong. He lost his hold on the knife. It fell to his blanket quietly, almost anticlimactic. The expression on his face cleared, and then he looked scared, terrified. There was no warning. He reached for her, and her hand found his. You can't stay, Katie cat, he'd said, a reverberation in his voice that sank into her like an earthquake tremor, all the way down to her toes. You're not going to get stuck in that town. Not like me. You're not going to get stuck anywhere. You won't stay, Katie. Not ever. And then his eyes had rolled up back in his head, the whites showing, and she'd cried out as the hand she held went limp. There'd been noise, and machines beeping, and doctors, but she'd processed it all at a remove, like there was a thin film between her and the world, like she was looking from behind a camera. Stroke, they said later, caused by a blood clot in Bo's brain. Tragic for someone so young. He'd left her without her best friend. He'd left her with just those words. You won't stay, Katie. Not ever. Not like me. Bo, Samuel's mother, Geraldine's daughter. Our curses hurt us, Kate said slowly, but the people who laid them didn't do it out of hate. There was a massive tree to the left of the road they walked. Kate watched a squirrel scamper up its trunk, watched the tree's leaves shudder in the breeze. I think I understand, she said. It's people who love us, who curse us. A curse is just a blessing you can't leave. Violet said. That's a good way of putting it. It's rare to be cursed out of hatred. People just don't hate hard enough. But they love hard enough. Yes. Violet sounded a little sad. They love hard enough to hurt. It's beautiful, in its way. Painful, too. You loved your cousin? There was a lump in Kate's throat. She thought of impromptu stick sword fights, dolls made of grass, senior pictures on the baseball field, sneaking out at midnight to listen for owls and watch for meteors, cramming cans of soda in their pockets while they climbed a tree, and swinging their legs 10 feet off the ground as they drank, the taste fizzy and cold and sweet. Beau's smile as he ruffled her hair, his voice as he called her Katy Cat, treating her like a kid sister more than a cousin. "Very much," she said. "I still do." Violet nodded. "That's why his curse still has a hold on you," she said. "Because you still love him. You care what he'd think of you. You let him have that hold. You've got to get over it, darling, however you can. He tried to give you a gift when he died, but you don't have to keep it." The chafe started when Kate crossed the Idaho-Washington border, a warning flash of heat at her soles. She gritted her teeth and clutched her handlebars tighter. The curse knew she was headed home. She motored into town within the hour, past the grain silos and the train tracks, past a few empty buildings and the tall, muraled brick wall of the library, past the road that she could turn down to get to her house, where her parents still lived, or to the cemetery, just a little further. First, there was someplace she needed to be. She puttered to a stop by the baseball field. It looked just the way it had when she'd left, overgrown grass and worn-down infield and all. She could see Beau as if he was standing there against the chain-link fence, his dreams not yet bottled up to fester and curl. His smile in his senior picture, the fire in him. They'd used that picture for his funeral. Kate hadn't picked up a camera since he'd died. She walked across the baseball field and sat, her back up against the fence. She propped her elbows on her knees. She could feel the curse coming with a vengeance, nothing stopping it. It was already up to her stomach, and she'd only been back for 20 minutes tops. Before she'd left Wisconsin, Kate had called Samuel on Violet's phone. She'd left Violet with Geraldine's name, too, in case Violet wanted to try her luck. Even tried to find the account of that Canadian, AJ, though it seemed he'd deleted it. Violet thought Kate's nightmares were a protective mechanism of the curse, a way to keep her from breaking it. But if Violet was wrong, Kate didn't want to leave Samuel wondering. Kate was never going to stop loving Beau, but she could assert herself against the echo of him. She could sit right here and gamble on that haunting idea. The only way out is through. It was a beautiful day. Blue skies, sun, the rustle of a gentle breeze across Kate's shoulders. The kind of day she remembered as a kid. Running through those fields with Beau, laughing so hard her ribs hurt. They hurt now. The curse had already reached them. It was moving fast, faster than it ever had. She studied her bare hands, the thin blue veins, the tendons, the knuckles. Imagined them all subsumed by the curse. It didn't summon the same panic it once had. If she didn't move, didn't leave now, the curse would consume her, as hungry as a flame. She let her head fall back against the fence, sending a ripple through the chain link, and closed her eyes. The curse crawled up her chest. She was a moth, cupped in a child's hands. She wasn't angry anymore. Not at Beau, not at herself. She saw a burial plot, dirt fresh turned, a phoenix spreading new wings. Either way, freedom. On guard, Beau, Kate thought, and stayed.
Tia Tashiro is a multiracial science fiction fantasy writer hailing from the Pacific Northwest. She has won a Derringer Award and has been a finalist for the Hugo, Locus, Sturgeon, and Astounding Awards for her short fiction. By day, she works in cognitive science. By night, she writes, and in between, she dabbles in stained glass and juggling, though never at the same time. Her short fiction is published in Uncanny, Clarkesworld, and Apex, among other venues. And now our poem, Instructions for Becoming Fire, by Chisomaga Umenyi, as read by Matt Peters.
Begin with every swallowed word. Pile them carefully, as though silence were wood and humiliation tender. Strike memory against memory until sparks come. Do not fear the crackle. Let your lungs fill with flame, not apology. Let your bones harden into ember. When they pour water on you, steam. When they bury you in ash, rise from it. Do not shrink for their comfort. Do not fold yourself small. Claim your light and carry it unbroken. One day, someone will say they cannot look at you. Do not flinch. That is what fire is for.
Chisomaga Umenyi is a Nigerian writer and pharmacy student at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Her works have been published in Midnight and Indigo, Uncanny Magazine, Stripe Magazine, Sublunary Magazine, Ache Review, and Ojuju Magazine. When she's not reading a book, she's usually reading another one or recovering from the last. Thank you for joining us on the Uncanny Magazine podcast. Today, I am joined by Tia Tashiro, the author of this month's podcast short story, Leavetaking. Welcome, Tia.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So this is such a powerful, poignant, and heartbreaking story with just these rich characterizations and unforgettable moments. What was your starting point or inspiration for the story?
One thing that I like to do when I am not quite sure what I want to be writing for a day, but I feel like I should get some words on the page, is I'll just have documents where I just do like a ton of first lines of things that I try to like maybe think are interesting, or lines that could maybe grab my attention for something longer. And so this actually came from a session of one of those that I did. I even have the dates. I do a lot of different documents. So it came from April 1st, 2025. In a document that had, among other things, lines like, "The squirrels have all become addicted to nicotine."
I want that story too now.
Yeah. And then later I actually came back to that document, and that was after I had just done like a cross-country road trip to move from North Carolina all the way to Idaho, or basically just to be there for a while. I came back to the line that the first line really hasn't changed since that first hooky session. And I came back to that line of Kate was cursed by her cousin on his deathbed to never stay, and kind of got really into it and developed the story out from there. Yeah.
It really is, it does grab you. I mean, it is quite an opening line that you just kind of immediately want to know, okay, what's this about?
Yeah, I feel like, and one thing that I wanted to do immediately from that was to kind of play with the balance of like the curse, and then immediately the fact that she actually had a really good relationship with the person who cursed her. So going into that immediately with the story is kind of where the rest of it kind of flowed out of.
No, it's really an interesting dynamic because it isn't that normal kind of curse story of it's somebody cursing because they hate each other, or you have trespassed upon my property. Or So what was the easiest part of writing this story? And what was the most difficult thing?
Yeah, so I think the easiest part, just because it was so fresh, was I pulled a lot of aspects of the places that Kate travels in the US from places that I had just been. So it was cool to get to like look at kind of my path and some pictures I'd taken on that long drive, and kind of pull from those areas to describe her journeys a bit. And I think that like groundedness in different regions of the US was kind of easier because of that. So yeah, that was kind of one of the things that I had a lot of fun with the story.
Oh, it really, you know, I live in central Illinois, near University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, but this is also kind of like prime driving through country. So, and I really felt that kind of like, you know, we're near Route 66, and a lot of people do road trips through here. And so I could feel like it really was, you know, it was evocative of those kinds of road trips of my childhood to go, because everywhere here, like people, when you live here, like going 4 hours away is still like, oh yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah, we'll take a trip over there. And then you have all the different kind of little towns in the countryside and the changing, you know, scenery. No, you really captured that well.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. It's part of the core of what I think I was trying to do with the emotional arc of the story too. So it's good to hear.
What was the most difficult part though?
Yeah, that's actually related to the emotional arc. I think that what I really wanted to make sure was that the because so much of this is about emotions and relationships between people, and expectations that are placed upon Kate and others in the story by the people who love them. I really wanted to make sure that her motivations and like her goals made sense, that she could see a lot of value in something that her cousin didn't. And I thought it was really important to make sure the character arc and the plot arc kind of twinned together in that way, and dovetailed well together. And that was a balance for me because at first I didn't have enough of Kate's motivations, and she was a little bit more like of a blank slate character. So making sure that I built in enough for it to be really satisfying when she basically is able to acknowledge her own wants and desires within the confines of her curse, was the tricky part.
No, and I think you did a very good job of it too, because it is such the kind of cliche to go to the whole what was wanted of her in the curse, and to just say, no, actually, I like my small town life. There's many benefits and things that I actually love about the little things here. And I thought that was very well captured. And I think it was very satisfying to have that kind of bow at the end of like, no, this was what she did want. I thought it was really well captured.
Oh, thank you. And I do feel like, to be fair, there's a little bit of almost the easier side of that too, because I grew up in kind of a similar town, as I get to describe here. And I've always had a really great relationship with it, where I love where I grew up and I love going back to visit. And so sometimes I want to draw on that and be like, yeah, like there are things that are really beautiful that you can sometimes only see if you grow up in a place,
Right.
But like everywhere you go, there's beauty and wonderful things there.
Oh, there's always something cool, something interesting. One of the things that I'm a big know the local history person, so I'm always fascinated by like not just the small towns, but who was there, and what, even if it's like, how did the local banker and pharmacist build these big houses that are the only big houses in the town, and that kind of all the just the little details about how a city grew and changed.
Yeah, for sure. I found out recently that I think Ursula K. Le Guin lived very briefly in my hometown and did not like it. And I was like, this is totally fine. Like, we can have our own opinions, Ursula.
So as you're saying, like in Leavetaking, Kate vividly travels throughout the United States. And you've talked about this road trip you've taken. Have you traveled a lot other than this road trip? And is there a place that you really long to travel to, though hopefully not due to some curse?
Yeah, I've traveled pretty extensively, and I've been very lucky to be able to. I've lived in 4 different countries in my life for different periods of time. Although I grew up mostly in the U.S., but I've been really lucky and been able to live a bunch of different places. But I think within that, I think I'd really love to visit Peru with one of my friends specifically, because I have a close friend who's Peruvian, and invited me out there. And I think sometime if we could make it work, I'd really love to go visit, specifically with her. Like, I feel like one thing I love doing, like, I think the more places that I've lived, the more commonalities I see, actually. Like, so many places are so similar in many regards. And, like, the different people there is really what makes it new and exciting and unique and awesome. And I feel like really what I take away from places is the relationships I make with people there. Which is why I think when I say like Peru would be great, it's because of that friend, not necessarily just Peru,
Well, it's always nice to be someplace with a friend who knows the real version of that place versus kind of like, here is the travel guide spots, and just kind of being immersed in this is how people live here. This is what our lives are like.
Yeah.
This is what we actually eat.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. So one of the places that I lived for like a year in Costa Rica when I was younger. And I think about that too with like, when you travel different places and you have lived there for a while, there's also things that become kind of normal and you don't think about for a long time. And I thought about this on the road trip because for the first time in years and years, because I lived in Costa Rica as a kid, I actually, on that road trip that inspired part of the story, I went to a Guatemalan restaurant for the first time in ages. And they had a lot of food that I like really recognized and had forgotten that I recognized from Costa Rica. And it's really cool how like those sense memories come back, the food memories come back so quickly. Something great about travel.
So tell us about something you've read, watched, or consumed lately that you'd really love to share with our listeners.
This is probably going to be a cold take, but I actually just discovered the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia E. Butler, and totally tore through those books just recently. And I love her short fiction, and I think that trilogy is my favorite of the works of hers that I've read, because I love what she does with the alien biology and character relationships. Just so good. So cold take, but still an excellent series. Would highly recommend.
Well, it's so good that it is great that people are still discovering it and that it's still out there. And like, even if it's been around a while, I always feel like it's because she passed away or like right before I became in the, sort of in the industry. And, it is such a shame that because I feel like now Butler is just being read and enjoyed, like definitely becoming one of the pillars of science fiction. I think she'd be very
absolutely.
pleased to
Oh
know
my gosh. Bloodchild is so good. And like all the other stories too. I think that one gets a lot of the press, but everything that she writes, man.
Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. I appreciated it.
Thank you, Space Unicorns, for listening to another episode of the Uncanny Magazine podcast. As always, we definitely couldn't have done it without all of you. Whether you are a patron on Patreon, Waitlist Books subscriber, just run around spreading the good word, or right now, what's kind of important, if you are a backer on the Uncanny Magazine yearly Kickstarter. Oh, do we need this? Because if not for all of your support, Space Unicorns, Uncanny Magazine just simply couldn't exist. So thank you for helping us put more kindness, art, and wonder into the world. And as always, I definitely couldn't do this without the greatest staff in the universe. That includes managing and soon-to-be nonfiction editor Monty Lin, poetry editor Betsy Aoki, podcast producers Erika Ensign and Stephen Shapansky, podcast reader Matt Peters, interviewer Carolyn M. Yoakum, assistant editor Tanya Chen, all of our amazing submissions editors, and, well, this time of year, Space Unicorns, it is, I think a lot about our lay-down budsman, Caitlin, my daughter, and I miss her very much. I miss my wife, Kirsty, and our kids in Scotland, and Caitlin cared about them very much, too, and, yeah. Just it's hard right now, Space Unicorns, to not have her here as I'm about to launch a Kickstarter every time. She was so supportive and she had such fun with them. She loved being in the video. She loved all the ridiculous things that are going to happen just to keep that ball rolling. So she's still with me in my heart. So till next time, shine on, Space Unicorns. Nay!
The Uncanny Magazine podcast theme is courtesy Null Device. Want to join the Space Unicorn Ranger Corps? You can find poetry, stories, and nonfiction every month in Uncanny Magazine. Go to uncannymagazine.com or subscribe to the ebook version at waitlistbooks.com. Uncanny Magazine podcast, copyright Uncanny Magazine.